The cassette recorder wasn't his. Aaron was sure of it. He'd packed light to cameras, a tripod, backup batteries, but not this. It sat square in the middle of the motel room floor, coated in a fine layer of dust like it had been waiting. When he pressed play, the room's silence shattered. A woman's voice stammered through static. They're chewing through the floorboards now. I hear my husband's teeth scraping the wood. Soft, wet, chewing, followed rhythmic, unhurried. Then a low moan. The tape hissed, then screamed. Aaron staggered back, bile burning his throat. The room suddenly smelled like rusted iron and something rotting beneath floorboards, thick, cloying, impossible to ignore. He rubbed his fingers against the desk beside him. Cold, wet. When he looked down, the faux wood surface was slick with something dark that seeped up from the grain. The wallpaper pulsed gently, like it was breathing. Beneath the paper, something shifted, scratched, whispered, "Not full, not yet." For a moment, the lights flickered on, bright, warm. A breeze passed through, carrying the smell of pine and firewood. Relief, but it vanished as quickly as prias. It came. The ceiling cracked. Something moved above him. The air changed heavier, saturated with copper and mold. His mouth filled with the taste of pennies and something old or bitter, clotted like dried blood. Aaron fell to his knees, R-E-T-H-I-N-G. His vision blurred. In its place came a flash, an old photograph tucked into the tape recorder's battery compartment. Black and white. A church gathering. Smiling faces. Red crosses painted across their mouths. On the back, in jagged pen, "The hollow must feed." Local folklore had warned of the mouth below, a spirit sealed beneath the town in 1879 by starving worshippers who fed it flesh to survive a winter that never ended. The lights blew out. Again, from under the floorboards came scraping teeth. Then, knock knock. One or something was at the door. Asterisk Dunwich Hollow wasn't on most maps. Even Aaron's GPS had glitched 5 miles back, its voice calmly repeating, recalculating, until it shorted out completely. Now, his tires crackled over gravel roads, swallowed by encroaching forest. Towering pine trees leaned inward as if listening. Fog clung to the branches like cobwebs, and the air smelled wrong thick with mildew, copper, and something cloying beneath it, like wet fur left to rot. The town emerged like a bruise under the mist. Houses sagged under their own weight, shutters hanging limp like broken limbs. Doors were barricaded from the inside. Spray painted across walls and porches were words, "Safe inside, do not open," in a child's scrawl. The hunger listens. Every window had been blacked out. Aaron stepped out of the car. Ground squelched beneath his boots. It hadn't rained. Somewhere deep in the fog, a bell tolled once hollow, metallic, far too close. Then silence. No birds, no wind, just the creaking groan of wood shifting under unseen weight. He blinked hard, trying to dismiss the vertigo. The world seemed to tilt around him. Inside the old general store, dusk carpeted everything like snow, but someone or something had drawn patterns in it. Circles, mouths, teeth. He brushed one with his hand. The counter surface was cold, sticky. He brought his fingers to his nose iron. Blood. Behind the counter, he found a tin box containing brittle newspaper clippings and yellowed pages torn from a leather-bound Bible. One article read, "Ritual fails. Pastor Gibbons among the first devoured." Another described the Feast of Closure, a local ceremony meant to trap the entity beneath the town by sealing all exits and sacrificing the least sinful. It hadn't worked. A breeze stirred the pages. The front door slowly creaked open on its own. A child's voice echoed from down the street. "Come back inside, Mr. Aaron. We're still hungry." His name. He hadn't told anyone his name. floor creaked behind Aaron. He spun nothing. Just the warped aisle shelves of the general store and a faint trail of his own boot prints in the dust. But the air had shifted, thicker, heavy with the scent of damp soil and scorched hair. Somewhere above, the ceiling groaned as if something massive dragged its weight across the roof. He told himself it was wind, just the wind, but the sound that followed was wet, slithering, meaty glide like raw meat against glass. He backed toward the front door, only to find it closed again. The bell above it hung limp. It hadn't rung. His throat tasted metallic. Copper. He wiped his lips and found red. Blood, but not his. His hands trembled. "You're tired," he muttered. "Sleep deprived, that's all." But his voice cracked. On a shelf near the register, he noticed a worn children's book, Little Hollow Boy and the Nevermoth. The cover was a crude drawing stick figure, children holding hands around a black hole in the earth. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting, "Read before sundown." As he flipped through it, the story unfolded in rhyme. A village that buried its shame beneath the church. A mouth that grew when fed. A warning to never speak its name after dusk. Final page was torn, scribbled in the margin. "It hears what you think." Suddenly, silence. To complete, the groaning stopped. Even his breath felt muffled. For a second, Aaron dared to believe it had passed. He exhaled slowly. Then the aisle shelves lurched forward with a crash, sending canned goods rolling across the floor like metal teeth. And there, just for a heartbeat, he saw it reflected in the freezer door glass. Behind him, long limbs, no face, just a mouth, always open, always listening. The freezer fogged with breath that wasn't his. Asterisk. Aaron stumbled out of the store and into the street, chest heaving. His palms stunk cut open from falling on broken glass. The taste of blood clung to his teeth. The fog had thickened, suffocating. The air smelled of scorched meat and damp stone, and every breath brought the sour temps of old bile and burnt. Copper-dot, he wandered aimlessly, eyes darting between warped windows and boarded doors. The town whispered now, not loud. It's just under the surface, hollow, 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 children's voices. Desperate for answers, he ducked into the old town hall. Dust billowed as he entered, and the scent of mildew struck him like a slap. Paper crunched beneath his boots, letters, memos, all with red stamps marked quarantined, do not breach. Hallway led him to the archive room. Its door hung half open, claw marks gouged deep into its frame. Inside, brittle boxes lined the shelves. Files, discolored by time and moisture, bulged from their folders. One folder, marked Winter 1879, Protocol 13, caught his eye. Inside were hand-drawn maps of the town only. The church stood at its center then, with everything else sprawling out later. Notes, scrawled in faded ink, spoke of the feeding circle, a ritual performed to contain the maw of the hollow. Each winter, a member was chosen, sacrificed beneath the chapel floor. It bought them peace for a while, till the town refused to continue. A page slipped loose. A photograph, a congregation standing proudly in front of the church. Their eyes were scratched out. Aaron blinked. For just a second, they all moved. He staggered back. The walls of the archive pulsed, wet, slick, bleeding ink from every crack. He tried to run, but every exit door had vanished. Only the chapel bell tolled again. Closer this time. It's too close. Asterisk. Aaron crept down the corridor of the town hall, one hand brushing the wall for balance. It was damp, sticky. It pulsed faintly beneath his fingertips, like the surface of something breathing. The overhead lights flickered in and out, casting long shadows that moved when he didn't. Somewhere ahead, he heard it, again, a soft, rhythmic whisper. "We remember, we remember, we remember." His head throbbed. Images flickered across. His vision, brief flashes, like old film reels playing behind his eyes. A man in robes, chanting, children crying behind wooden pews, blood pouring through floorboards like water through a grate. He stumbled into a courtroom, the silence inside, thick as syrup. A long table stood at the center, with chairs on either side. And at the far end, old rotary phone, its receiver off the hook. Swaying slowly, Aaron approached it, hesitated, then lifted it to his ear. There was no dial tone, only wet breathing. And then, in a voice that sounded like 1,000 whispers crawling over glass, "You are the mouthpiece. You are the meal." He dropped the phone. His tongue felt too large in his mouth. Tasted like bile and rust. He turned, ready to run, and saw her. A woman stood at the door, pale, eyes glazed over, mouth stitched shut with barbed wire. She raised one trembling hand and pointed to the ceiling above them. Black liquid bled through the tiles and dripped down the walls, forming symbols in a language he didn't recognize. She mouthed something, over and over. "Don't speak, don't speak, don't speak." The lights snapped off, and in the pitch darkness, Aaron felt cold fingers wrap around his wrist. Too many fingers. Too long. And then a second mouth opened on his palm. It whispered, "Back." Aaron bolted from the courtroom, shaking. The air in the hallway had thickened, sticky and warm, with a copper tint that burned the back of his throat. Every breath tasted like blood. Each step echoed too loud, too slow, like he was wading through a dream that refused to let him wake. He burst into what looked like a record's vaultros of old filing cabinets, some hanging open like yawning mouths. One drawer twitched shut as he approached. The walls oozed black resin from deep cracks, forming lines that pulsed in rhythm with his heart. His eyes itched, his gums throbbed. The mouth on his palm had vanished, but he still felt it like it was waiting. Desperate for answers, he opened a nearby cabinet. Inside were brittle notebooks, ceremonial ledgers, and a small, hand-bound leather journal. It smelled like old meat and formaldehyde. His fingers trembled as he flipped it open. A priest's diary, written in hurried, crumbling script. "We fed it for generations. Kanda Ma needed one every winter, chosen by the bone dice. We sealed it in the hollow beneath the church with tongues sewn shut. But in 42, the dice chose the mayor's daughter. He refused. They buried the priest alive instead. The mall wasn't fooled. The entries became more erratic after that tink smeared with what looked like dried blood, pages torn. One final note, scrawled in a shaking hand. The hunger doesn't forget. We don't offer. It takes whole minds, whole bodies, whole towns." Aaron froze as the whispering returned, now louder, not from outside, from inside his head. Then the floor beneath him shuddered, groaned. He looked down. The concrete buckled, cracked open. Something wet and pale slithered through. And then he heard his own voice behind him, whispering, "You're already inside it." Asterisk. Aaron staggered back as the floor cracked wider, revealing a dark shaft beneath the town hall. The edges of the hole were slick with some foul-smelling secretion, like meat left too long in summer heat. The air pouring from it was moist, rank, with rot and copper. It made his teeth ache. He couldn't stop gagging. The taste of bile clung to the back of his tongue like rusted nails. But then, silence. The ground stilled. The voices stopped. Even the black resin on the walls seemed to dry and crust over. For a moment, just one suspended breath of false calm, Aaron thought maybe it was over. He descended the ladder, bolted to the shaft wall, each rung, ice cold, wet, slick. Below, he landed in what looked like a crypt. Candles burned with blue flames, though no one had lit them. Their wax bled upward. Bones lined the walls, etched with symbols he remembered from the priest's journal, warding signs meant to bind. But some had been scratched out, defiled, and in the center of the room, an altar of charred wood and flesh. Beside it, a mural painted in something thick and flaking. It showed villagers feeding bound figures to a great black spiral emerging from the ground. Beneath it, a scrawl, "To deny the maw is to become it." Aaron's mind buckled. Memories that weren't his poured in visions of tongues being nailed to church doors, of mothers smothering their own children to avoid the draw of the bone dice, rituals long buried banned. But the thing beneath had grown, fed on silence, secrecy, and betrayal. He turned to Runand, saw dozens of stitched mouths on the walls. Opening, a chorus of voices surged, "We are still hungry." And then the mural's spiral moved. Aaron screamed. The spiral twisted like muscle under skin, pulsing with breath it shouldn't have. The floor quaked. The stitched mouths on the wall began to hum a guttural drone that vibrated in his bones. His nose bled, his eyes stung, and through the haze of nausea and blood, he felt something inside him crack. A voice's own whispered from nowhere, "You were always meant to feed it." He stumbled back, slipping on something slick. The altar had begun to ooze, dark, tar-like fluid dripping to the stone floor, sizzling where it touched the old bone warts. A bitter temp filled the air like rotting pennies and bile. The room reeked of violated graves and ancient wrongs. Aaron tasted copper at the back of his throat. Then something sweet, like sugar gone sour. He gagged, and spitete was thick, stringy, red. The mural's spiral widened, revealing not paint, but depth. A tunnel, breathing, beckoning. He turned to run, but the ladder was gone. The shaft had sealed above him. Cold stone had shifted soundlessly, trapping him. The mouths on the walls shrieked in a chorus of rage and hunger. But then, ... silence. Everything stopped. The humming faded. The altar ceased to bleed. Even the oppressive heat in the air seemed to lift. For one terrifying moment, Aaron hoped maybe it had gone back to sleep. He laughed, giddy, exhausted, alone. Maybe it just wanted to be heard, he whispered. Then came the click, not mechanical, but bone on stone. Spiral widened again. Pale hand, stitched at the wrist, reached through, not grabbing offering, holding something. It was a mask, made of faces. Aaron stepped closer, heart hammering. His mouth opened, and the mask whispered his name. Asterisk. Aaron tried to scream, but the mask fused to his skin like wet parchment, sealing his cries inside his own skull. The taste of bile soaked his tongue, sharp, bitter, metallic. He clawed at the leather-thin faces stretching across his own, fingernails scraping raw skin beneath. Every breath sucked in the scent of rot and copper, as though the air itself had been filtered through centuries of decomposition. The spiral pulsed again, each beat a drum in his skull. His thoughts unraveled. He was still Aaron, wasn't he? Or had he always been something else, waiting to return? His reflection in the glistening wall, black and wet like oil, moved. Without him, it smiled when he sobbed. Round him, the walls bled anew. Cave crimson wept from the mural's seams, trickling in rivulets across the floor, coiling around his boots. The whispers returned. Not many voices this time, just one, deep, female. The offering wears the mask. The offering remembers. He staggered forward, hand brushing the spiral altar's edge. Cold, slick, like touching a drowned corpse. Beneath the grime, he saw etchings, fragments of a history erased. A town that had once worshipped something buried. Not a god, not a demon, a mouth one that fed on memory, identity, and then flesh. The town's elders had tried once to stop it, branding the walls with blood runes, sealing its tongue beneath stone. But they had whispered prayers instead of screams and had starved. Now it hungered again. Aaron fell to his knees, gasping. The air shimmered. Shapes formed villagers, past offerings, their mouths sewn shut. They bowed, not to him. Through him, he realized, too late, he wasn't the offering. He was the door, and behind him, thing had just knocked. The knock became a pounding, okay? Each thud echoed through Aaron's spine, resonating like a funeral bell beneath his ribs. The walls heaved around him, wreathing, alive. Veins pulsed through the wallpaper like roots in a graveyard. The copper stench thickened until every inhale choked him with the taste of blood and rust. He blinked, his eyes burned. The spiral in the center of the room spun slowly, dragging his sanity into its center like a whirlpool of memories he no longer trusted. He stumbled back, half believing he'd imagined it all. Maybe it was a hallucination. Maybe he was in the hospital. Again, another breakdown, another psychotic episode. The silence settled. The whispers stopped. A flickering light buzzed above, steady for the first time. He wiped his face. His hands were clean. The faces were gone. Maybe it was over. Then the ceiling screamed. Flesh peeled from above, long strips falling like skin from a butcher's hook. The walls burst open in jagged seams. Screaming mouths appeared in every corner familiar. Mouths, his mother's, his own. They chanted the town's name backwards, syllables that made his teeth rattle and his stomach churn loud. The spiral lit up, burning white, a final warning, or a final invitation. He saw it then, a vision, ancient and raw, a pit deep beneath. The earth where villages once fed their dreams to an entity they called Zaliv, not God, not demon, echo, a spirit that reflected what was hidden, what was buried, and then devoured it. They'd tried to wall it in with stone and silence. Failed. Aaron laughed, cried, bit his tongue until he tasted copper, and screamed through clenched teeth. He dropped to all fours as the floor pulsed under him. Something crawled up his throat, whispering, and in the empty town square. A child picked up Aaron's fallen mask and smiled.